Growing up, I was huge into some of the classic first-person shooters like Quake, Doom, Duke Nukem, Wolfenstein. Those were games that I grew up playing, and I have a still fondness for them to this day. However, as I've gotten older, that style of game has kind of started to disappear, and we don't really have any of these old school style shooters making much of an appearance anymore. A lot of them have turned into the flashy style of Call of Duty games, which I also appreciate, but I've always had a special place for those old school classic shooters. And recently, going through Gamepass, I was looking at some of the new releases and I saw that Warhammer Boltgun had been released on Gamepass, and looking at the videos and the screenshots for it, I decided to check it out. And this game itself is very much in the vein of some of those old school shooters. So in this video, I'm going to go over this game and what I think about it and what I think it offers to the first person genre. So let's take a look. So Warhammer Boltgun came out recently. It's on a bunch of different platforms. I, of course, am playing it on my Xbox Series X. And a couple of things you'll notice immediately is the game isn't trying to go for ultra-realistic modern graphics. It's trying to basically capitalize on its old school origins or aesthetic by using sprites mixed with 3D environments. And to me, I think this works great for what this game's trying to accomplish, because it's not really trying to be more than it is, and it does a really good job of that. One of the first things that I really appreciate and enjoy about Boltgun is that the movement feels smooth and fast, like a lot of the old school Quakes or Quake Arenas or Unreal Tournaments that I grew up playing. And I love that approach to this style of game because it really encourages fast-paced, frantic movement and action. Now, the game does have some elements that are more modern, and what I mean by that is it throws in things like executions using your chainsaw gun, and basically it feels a little bit kind of like how Doom Eternal plays if you've played that game. However, as you get throughout the game, so you start off with the namesake of the title, which is a bolt gun to, take out hordes of enemies. As you get through the game, you obviously unlock new or find new weapons throughout the world. One of them that I think is probably the most fun and continues to be the most fun as I keep playing through this game is the shotgun. It has a nice, powerful impact to it, and it feels akin to, the old school Dooms or Quakes that I played, and it really packs that nice punch, and it makes taking out hordes of enemies quite fun. The game itself is very much structured like a lot of old school shooters where you're going around collecting key cards, trying to unlock doors, get to new areas, move to different places, and so on and so forth. And as you're doing that, you're taking on hordes and hordes of enemies, taking on some that are stronger than others. And it definitely maintains that old school appeal for people who grew up playing those types of shooters like myself. The game tries to market itself as having things like more modern AI. I can't tell you that I felt like this game was, ultra, intelligent bad guys. It felt, again, more like old school shooters, which for me is perfect because I enjoy this type of aesthetic. I enjoy this type of gameplay, and I enjoy that the game really overwhelms you with a ton of different enemies, but gives you enough firepower to make you feel like you're capable of being able to handle all of them, which is kind of what was the exciting part of a lot of the old school shooters that I was into growing up. This isn't a tactical shooter. This isn't a shooter that's expecting a lot out of you in terms of storyline or the way it moves. It's just a game that really does feel like its old school elements, which is going through corridor or area at a time, getting key cards, killing as many enemies as possible, and moving on to the next area. Now, again, in the vein of some of the old school shooters, there are a couple little cool quirks and secret areas that you can find and secret unlockables you can get to power up your character for a short time period, giving you faster speed or more powerful weapons and those sorts of things, which I thought was awesome. And of course, even as you get throughout the game, you start to find bigger and badder enemies, and it leads for a lot of really fun gameplay. Now, as it stands, the only thing that kind of threw me off with this is I felt like some of the corridors are a little confusing, and in some cases I felt like I was going through a maze in some areas, which is a kind of a minor detracting point. But as it stands overall, if you're into classic old school shooters, I would heavily recommend checking out Warhammer Boltgun. I understand if you're into modern shooters or were never growing up with these classic arena style shooters, you probably won't find this as exciting. But if you're like me and you like those old school, almost mindless shooters, this is a great game. The only other big detracting point I can take from it that I really wish it had was a solid multiplayer mode. To me, this is the perfect style of game that I would love to jump online and play against other people with, kind of like the classic Quake arenas or Unreal tournaments, because this game's kind of set up for that type of gameplay. And unfortunately, this game does lack that component, which is probably, to me, one of the biggest detracting points from it, and probably going to be an even bigger detracting point for people who might not be too warm to these old school shooters in general. Otherwise, the single player experience of this game I think is phenomenal, and I think is just a great game overall if you want to jump back into almost a nostalgic feeling classic shooter.